Chapter 7 is the final part of Elihu's speech. There is no break from the end of 36, and Elihu is still describing the greatness of God as displayed in a storm. Here he repeatedly mentions God's voice 5 times in the first 5 verses. This anticipates the next chapter, where God speaks out of the whirlwind. In fact, Elihu's speeches have anticipated some of the things God will say from the beginning. But here it gets even more similar. He speaks of God's control of nature, particularly the storm. Reference is made to animals. He prods Job with questions about the operations of the weather, using questions like, "Do you know?" and "Can you?" which is how God will speak to Job. What is Elihu talking about in this chapter? He seems, in all his talk, mainly to have argued 2 things: that suffering is not necessarily punishment and may be used to restore righteous ones who have gone wayward. He differs then from the other 3 because he does not completely condemn Job as wicked and thoroughly deserving. Though he probably still does think Job has merited his current plight, there is still a chance to see his suffering as God chastening him and calling him back. This then is his second point, that God is not silent as Job complains, but communicates in various ways, suffering being one of them. Now in chapter 37, the final way of communication Elihu describes is meteorological. But God is not about to speak through the storm, but out of the storm. Job need not contemplate the operations of creation. God will address him like a man. The confrontation which Job long desired and also feared has come upon him. God's response to Job is in 2 parts, and Job responds at the end of each. The first contains a broad view of creation, its origins, mysteries, and operations. The second focuses on the strange beasts Behemoth and Leviathan. God's response to Job is not exactly what we would today call pastoral. There is no expression of sympathy or care. There is also no explanation for Job's suffering, no confirmation that Job is indeed righteous and did not deserve what he's experienced, nor revelation about the contest with the devil, which were its origins. God instead reverses what Job hoped for by immediately interrogating him for his ignorant talk. Job must be made to account for his words, not God for his deeds. Is this not what Job feared all along, that if he met God, God would simply crush him? The conclusion seems to be, I am God and you are a man. What is there to explain? There is some truth to this bold rendering of what is happening here. Who are you, as Paul writes in Romans 9, to talk back to God? There can never be a situation where, much as Job thinks it is the case for him, a human can have something over God, a legitimate complaint, a suit, or an argument. It is just not possible. But God does speak to Job. He does not owe Job an explanation or any revelation, yet he does address him at length, and this alone is enough for Job. Adding to the complexity is the fact that God begins by saying that Job speaks without knowledge, but later he will affirm that Job has spoken rightly about him, unlike his 3 friends. It seems like a contradiction, but even the highest and best speech about God which a mortal can articulate still falls short of God. How can we perfectly understand him, know all there is to know, and describe it accurately in all of its mysteries? There is no speech which talks of God and does not fail. But God's critical address must mean more than this. Job has complained of God's treatment of him, that he has assigned him to suffering, that he hides from him, that he does not punish the wicked, that there is, as a consequence, not much, if anything, to be gained from a righteous life. Although Job knows that God is God and he is a man, it is still impossible to imagine relations between him and God which are not based on his earthly experience. For example, taking someone to court or being attacked by an army or a wild animal. Job not only does not know what he is talking about when he talks about suffering and justice, but he cannot know. He knows his own righteousness, which God himself affirmed to Satan, but what can he accurately say about God and his ways apart from things which he has seen? God therefore takes him, as it were, on a tour of things Job has not seen and never will see. He does not explain the situation to him, but he shows him the universe of which he is only a tiny, fleeting part. This is not intended to belittle Job, although it could easily be taken that way. It is to give Job a taste of the enormity of reality which is far beyond the comprehension of mortals. It is as if God is saying, if the world was really as small as it appears to you, and my place in it and your place in it was as the way you perceive, then maybe, yes, you'd have a point. But you do not understand the world you live in, nor your place in it, nor the way I establish things and keep them working. What justice and punishment and right and wrong look like on your scale is completely different to what it looks like on mine. Again, this is not to say that Job's suffering does not matter or that God has bigger concerns. But as much as God and the operations of the creation are a mystery, working by power and wisdom only fathomable to God, so suffering and its meaning is also wrapped up in this gigantic mystery. God's speech to Job then, though on the surface sounding like a rebuke of his ignorance, which, to be fair, it is, actually functions to draw Job out of his private hell and into the immensity of God.